This is Jacob from DragonBastard Games, here with another campaign diary. This one picks up right where the last one left off, so I would definitely recommend watching that one first. Savvy that things were about to get a little violent, Carthal lifts Seeker up to the window and steps in himself. Both suffer a few blows from the zombie monks as they do so, making it clear that fleeing may be the best idea. Kinraglog receives his own beating as he attempts to do the same, but Carthal and Seeker already have all the real estate on the windowsill. He leaps up to the top of the frame and scrabbles up the side, barely catching on. The monks close in, but fail to tear any of them down. Seeker begins to cross the rope, as does Carthal, but his rope snaps beneath his weight. He tumbles down to the pool below, taking some damage when he hits the water. The rope Seeker was crossing on remains. Kinraglog leaps from the window, catching that rope, and swings across the gap smoothly like a monkey. Seeker feels less confident and steps down onto a stone spire that rises halfway to the wall. Master Jen, the lead zombie monk, leaps through the window and slides across the rope on his feet. He shouts behind him as he does, "Guard the tower, I'll be back." Kinraglog flees at top speed, using Step of the Wind to stay away. Master Jen looks as though he intends to follow, but is shocked by Seeker's lightning lure. He crosses back on the rope to assault him. Before he has the chance, though, he fails the save versus a second lightning lure and is pulled from the rope, plummeting to the pool 100 feet below. He lands with a splash into the water. Carthal turns back, full of panic, just having exited the water. Master Jen begins to swim towards him. Carthal backs away, but keeps his eyes on him, trying to read him. His dead eyes seem cold. Realizing there's no placating his fury, Carthal charges him and gores him with his horns. Finally, Master Jen goes limp. Carthal untangles his horns from the preserved corpse. Kinraglog and Seeker watch from above and sign to meet each other halfway. Carthal complies, carrying Jen on his shoulder, after checking his body briefly. He did find a book, which he stashes in his bag, and a silver chain of command with the sign of King Armand Barrett on it, which Carthal recognizes. Not wanting to disrespect the dead, Carthal leaves it on his neck. Along the way, Carthal rummages through his own pockets and finds a note. It seems to be in another language, so he sets it aside for later. I should probably mention, Carthal has an aspect of his backstory that he has a fine coat and a tricorn hat. He had encountered a traveling Goliath on the road. The Goliath did a coin trick, sleight of hand, and when he saw the coin disappear, Carthal was enraged, so he hit him in the head. His things were very nice, so Carthal naturally wanted them and took them. This note is likely from that event. He pauses after hearing some rustling and looks for it. He watches a chimp search for onlookers, lift some leaves, revealing a metal hatch in the ground. He spins the helm, opens the hatch, steps inside, and pulls it shut behind him. The leaves settle back down on top of it. Carthal is perturbed, but makes a mental note of the location and continues on, trusting his minotaur sense of direction to lead him back. Meanwhile, on the way out to meet Carthal, his boat in tow, Seeker and Kinraglog run into trouble. Seeker sees a hunting blind up in a tree and the faint reflection from a lens. He points it out to Kinraglog. Seeker hears the creaking sound of bows being strung. They dive for cover behind the boat. Arrows fly toward them but embed in the hull of the boat. Seeker returns a few errant eldritch blasts, but they prove ineffectual. 2 hobgoblins drop from the hunting blind and continue to shoot as they approach. Seeker falls, an arrow in his chest. Through a regional feature, he possesses relentless endurance, and Seeker rises again, just in time to be struck by another arrow. Kinraglog removes the arrow and patches the wound. He leaps up, hurling his spear at one. It delivers a glancing blow, scratching his cheek, but is mostly deflected by his chainmail. They continue forward. Kinraglog resists expertly, but they manage to pin him down and tie him up. Kinraglog realizes they believe he is a goblin, not an orc child. They are both thrown onto the boat, and the hobs drag the boat along. Eventually, Carthal sees those 2 hobs dragging his boat through the jungle, and he hurls a throwing axe at the one with the injured cheek. He deflects it with his Maqua Whittle, the obsidian shard sword associated with the Aztecs. Another skirmish occurs, and although the hobs are damaged, they take down Carthal, who they chuck into the boat. About this time, Kinraglog manages to slip his bonds and attends the nasty gash across Carthal's chest. The Hobbs notice this and realize they must knock out Kinraglog to take him in. They fight. He punches one Hob out, but the other Hob clubs him down. He hits the ground, and there's a flash of black, but immediately snaps back awake, fueled by his orcish rage. He leaps up and punches out the remaining Hob. Both Hobs knocked out, Kinraglog turns to Seeker, who had fallen off the boat in the struggle. His head hit the ground. Kinraglog bends to take the Hob's gear, a suit of chainmail, the Makwa whittle, his shield, bow, and arrows, but the other Hob rises suddenly. An unlikely nat 20 on a death save. He shouts him down, baring his fangs. This Hob realizes he is an orc and flees. Immediately thereafter, the second also rises, another unlikely nat 20. Kinraglog stares him down, tilting his head toward his friend. "Run," he utters in Hob command. The Hob also flees. About this time, having hit his head on the way down, Seeker also wakes. A third unlikely nat 20 on death saves. He sees the fleeing Hobs and instinctively hurls an eldritch blast, but it misses. They escape. The group decides to flee back to town, post-haste. This would be why I'm calling this segment Tubthumping, after the song of the same name. Not only do Kinraglog and Seeker both get knocked down and get up again with their ability, but so does it happen 3 more times from nat 20s on death saves. That does raise a bit of an issue, I've noticed, though. There's a slight tendency when you go down to figure out if you're dead or not. Everyone gets panicky, and it's already happened twice this campaign. They roll all their death saves at once, hoping they won't be dead. This is a problem for a few reasons. 1, it takes out the suspense. 2, that stuff happens per turn, which I will enforce more firmly come the future. Other characters can do something about it, and if a player realizes their character might die, it takes some of the oomph out of the fellow players who may try to rescue them. Carthal's player quickly made 6 death saves and failed them all consecutively. As a result, when Kinraglog went back to rescue him, it felt almost like we were undoing something that happened. Another small note. 6 death saves, you demand? Yes, 6 death saves. I play with a slight variant on death saves. Instead of 3 failed you die, I do every failed death save accrues a level of exhaustion. Yes, this gives player twice the chances to survive, unless already very exhausted. But I'm cool with that. Death sucks, and hey, don't forget, a melee hit is automatically 2 death saves failed, or in my case, 2 levels of exhaustion accrued. It's also only kinda easy on the players, because hey look, Healing Word brought you back after you failed 2 death saves. You come back up, but with half speed and disadvantage on ability checks. That's nasty, and it keeps getting nastier. That lets folks pass out in combat and come to with a broken leg or clutching their guts in. That's awesome. It's cinematic. We do that all the time in stories, why not D&D? And it means after a nasty fight, you might not be quite right again for almost a week. Wicked. Positively wicked. Back in town, they rest. When they wake, late that night, Disciple Hank is there. "I'm here to help." The group resists somewhat, but he insists, explaining that he spied into the future and saw they would need him in the tower. They reluctantly agree, lending him the chainmail temporarily. Carthal, now awake, passes around the note he found to see if anyone can read it. Kinraglog says it looks like it's encoded, but based on the address, Sweetest Victor, believes the note is likely in Grower as well. He puzzles over it passively for a while. While he does that, Seeker searches the body of the monk, Master Jen, taking the silver chain of command that Carthal left behind. Carthal, seeing this, remembers the book in his bag and passes it around. Within it are numerous scientific and astronomical observations. Seeker flips through with Comprehend Languages active and reads the notable excerpts below. "We know space is a void, so there must be no fuel for the star from outside of it. All energy, therefore, comes from within. The body itself is capable of greater energy than we understand. That is the key. Light bends around sufficiently massive objects. It must have weight, even if very little, perhaps the fragment of the body that forged it. The occultation of the cosmic observer yields interesting levels of disparate light groups, frequencies 428 trillion cycles per second, 566 trillion. and 638 trillion. The people are afraid of my wife. I must confront her, but I worry for her. Cynthia had such a hard time as late. I worry I lack the calmness to handle this appropriately. I've put it off again. I don't wish to believe the rumors. I cannot deny my people an investigation, though. I have told my wife I'm preparing security to protect us from an invasion. It stings my heart to lie to her so. Tonight it is finished. Do not yet know if the rumors are true. I fear the worst. I've prepared for our flight from here. The passage is open, but as I give the signal, Master Jen will take over for me, locking her workshop behind us. Never shall it open under his watchful eye. Ever the optimist, I prepared for this to be an overreaction. Or perhaps there is a cure for my Cynthia I have not yet found. Maddened by the occult, it can still be undone. Then, in new handwriting, I have watched the tower for many weeks. Soon I will be relieved to visit my family. 3 days remain. It is quiet now. It took the first 2 weeks for the laboratory to quiet down, but now there is only silence. I hope to be reassigned, but I know why I must stay. The flash. I cannot unsee it. It has been a century, I think. I've done my best to defend this place, and I've been keeping my men and I fresh. I cannot help but think of my sweet little girl. I never got to see her. Kara, what became of you? Did you perish in the fires? Are you alone? I love you, Kara. I'm sorry. You can imagine, I didn't give them a book full of silly notes. I gave them a select few and told them they flipped through it and found the relevant bits. Some players may like intense research, but not my players. In fact, not most players. It also means I don't need to toil over more or less peripheral lore. I cherry-picked a few details that hint at information in the setting, on specific big players in the world, and hints for upcoming puzzles. I want this to stay fun, and ideally relevant. Why put energy into lore if it never comes up? They discuss this with Hank, who reads it over Seeker's shoulder. Realizing Hank can simply speak Old Barrett, they return to the tower to speak with the monks. After some small fuss, they agree and take them in. With Hank as translator, they determine that the monks have been protecting this tower from Cynthia and her agents. When told the party had been sent to clear out the corruption within, the monks suggest that they probably meant behind the sealed hatch to the laboratory. Upstairs in the observatory, they examine the telescope, which has 9 runes on it, each above a plug, one on each of the sections of it. Hanging from the ceiling are 9 glass cables, each with a corresponding rune. Vast arrays of gears occupy the edges of the room, the operation of which can adjust the telescope position and open and close the copper dome over it. They take a look outside and train the telescope on the observer, a constellation in the shape of a giant eye. However, it's currently occulted by the moon. Recognizing the connection to the book, they train on it and look at the aurora-colored corona coming around it. Testing, they plug each of the glass cables in, one by one, watching individual colors disappear as they go from the image the telescope presents, and the cables lighting up with the associated color. With the middle 7 plugged in, the image appears black, except to Kinraglog and Seeker, both of whom have dark vision and can see a little bit of a light. Plugging in the bottom cable blocks their vision as well. They have not been able to determine what the 9th plug might do. Unable to progress further, they go into the basement and give it a quick look. Down here, there's a distinct humming, and a strange whining as they move about the room. On the wall, there's a panel of silvery switches. 4 of them are in the up position in a row, and it seems there is an up, middle, and down position for each. There is also 3 5-petaled blossoms of silver in the corners of the room on the wall. Each points towards the center of the room. At the center of the room is a glass orb about 3 feet off the ground, balanced on an ebony dowel itself hovering in the air. Within the glass orb is another glass orb about 3 inches deep. At the center of the inner glass orb is another ebony dowel. Between the spheres is a viscous liquid, mostly clear, but swirls of red, green, and blue suspended within it. The swirls look vaguely like script. The group has yet to do much in this room. That's about where we left off, at about midnight on autumn 32nd. I suppose I never addressed how I track time. I think it's important to keep track of time, but tracking months individually is cumbersome and not terribly intuitive. I switched to tracking 91 days in each season. It's much simpler and tells me a lot more about climate and the behavior of people than individual months would. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, elect to receive notifications. I try to post a video every Thursday, so there should be more soon. I've also got a Patreon set up if anyone's interested in supporting me. Right now, my plan is to post more videos and possibly release some of my game notes, maps, etc. I've got some big plans for the future, but they're a little bit distant to go into too much detail. Until next Thursday, bye-bye.